What if I told you about a boy who was abandoned by his biological parents at birth, dropped out of college, and was even fired from the very company he helped create, yet went on to change the world of technology forever? And here's the most surprising part. If he had never been fired from his own company, there's a good chance the iPhone, iPad, and Mac would never have existed. This is the story of a man who lost again and again, but ultimately changed the world. February 24th, 1955. A baby boy was born in San Francisco, California. His mother was a college student and his father was a Syrian graduate student. They weren't married at the time, so they made one of the hardest decisions of their lives. They placed their baby up for adoption. Soon after, a humble couple adopted him. Their names were Paul and Clara Jobs. They named him Steve Jobs. His family wasn't wealthy. His father worked as a mechanic, but they gave him something far more valuable than money. They believed in him. As a child, Steve spent countless hours in the garage with his father. Paul would take machines apart, put them back together, and teach Steve that even the parts no one could see should be made with care and perfection. That simple lesson planted the seed of excellence in Steve's mind. In school, Steve was different from the other kids. He loved asking questions more than memorizing answers. Many teachers thought he was difficult, but a few recognized his curiosity and encouraged it. Over time, electronics became his greatest passion. As a teenager, Steve learned about a company called Hewlett-Packard. One day he did something most people would never dare to do. He picked up the phone and called the company's co-founder, Bill Hewlett, directly. Steve explained that he needed electronic parts for a project he was building. Just think about that. A regular teenage kid calling the founder of one of America's biggest technology companies. And the incredible part? He wasn't turned away. Bill Hewlett was so impressed by Steve's confidence that he gave him the parts he needed, and even offered him a summer job. That moment taught Steve an unforgettable lesson. Sometimes, simply asking can open doors you never imagined. A few years later, Steve enrolled in college, but after only 6 months he dropped out. People said he was throwing away his future. He had very little money. He slept on friends' floors. He returned empty soda bottles just to earn enough for food. Every Sunday he walked miles across town because a local temple served a free meal. But he never stopped learning. Even after dropping out, he continued sitting in classes that truly interested him. One of those classes was calligraphy. At the time, no one could have imagined that learning beautiful lettering would one day transform the way millions of people experience computers. Not even Steve knew. Life often teaches us lessons whose true meaning doesn't become clear until years later. Around that time, Steve met a friend who was nothing short of an electronics genius. His name was Steve Wozniak. The two spent countless hours working together in a small garage, building new ideas. They didn't have a big company. They didn't have millions of dollars. They didn't have a fancy office. All they had was a dream. To build a computer that ordinary people could use. Back then, computers were seen as machines for large corporations and scientists. But Steve believed something different. He believed that one day every home would have a computer. People laughed at the idea. Some even called him crazy, but history has proven something remarkable. The world always laughs first at the people who can see the future before everyone else, and one day it calls those same people geniuses. This was the beginning of a journey that would give birth to one of the greatest technology companies in history. But before that could happen, Steve would have to make choices that would change his life forever. Some people are born into wealth, some inherit success, but others are tested by life at every single turn. And those are the people who end up making history. Steve Jobs was one of them. When Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak began building their first computer in the small garage of Steve's family home, they had no large team, no investors, and no fancy office. All they had was a dream. To build a computer that ordinary people could use. In 1976, they founded a company. They called it Apple. The beginning wasn't easy. Money was tight, so Steve Jobs sold his Volkswagen van and Steve Wozniak sold his prized scientific calculator so they could afford the parts they needed. They worked day and night. Many nights they stayed awake until sunrise, determined to make their vision a reality. Slowly, the Apple I began reaching customers. But the real breakthrough came with the Apple II. It became an enormous success, turning Apple into a multi-million-dollar company within just a few years. The young man who had once dropped out of college was now recognized as one of the world's most successful young entrepreneurs. But just as success arrived quickly, so did new challenges. Steve Jobs demanded perfection. He obsessed over every tiny detail. Many employees believed he was an extremely demanding boss. His decisions often sparked disagreements. Apple was growing rapidly, but so was the conflict inside the company. In 1984, Apple introduced the Macintosh. It was a revolutionary computer, but sales didn't meet expectations. Tension inside the company continued to grow. Then, in 1985, the unthinkable happened. The man who had founded Apple was forced out of the very company he had built. Imagine spending your entire life building a dream, only to be pushed out of it. Steve Jobs was devastated. He later admitted that it felt as though his entire identity had been taken away. Most people would have given up, but Steve Jobs wasn't most people. He made a decision. If one door had closed, he would build another. He started a new company. Its name was Next. At first, very few people paid attention, but Steve wasn't standing still. He was learning, growing, becoming an even better leader. Around the same time, he purchased a small animation company. Its name was Pixar. Almost no one could have predicted that this small studio would go on to revolutionize the animation industry. After years of hard work, Pixar released Toy Story. It became the world's first fully computer-animated feature film. The movie was a massive success. Pixar grew into a billion-dollar company. Steve Jobs had found success once again, but life still had one more incredible twist waiting for him. Meanwhile, Apple was struggling. Its new products weren't succeeding. The company was losing money. Eventually, Apple's leadership made a decision that shocked the entire industry. They asked Steve Jobs to come back. The man who had once been pushed out had now become Apple's greatest hope for survival. Steve returned, but this wasn't the same Steve Jobs who had left years earlier. Now he had experience, lessons learned from failure, and a vision capable of changing the world. He canceled dozens of unnecessary projects. Then he made a promise. We're going to make fewer products, but we're going to make them the best in the world. Soon after came the iMac, colorful, beautiful, completely different from anything people had seen before. Customers loved it. Apple was alive again, but Steve wasn't finished. He asked a simple question. What if people could carry their entire music library in their pocket? The answer became the iPod. Then came iTunes, and the music industry was changed forever. But the biggest revolution was still ahead. It was 2007. Steve Jobs stood on stage with a smile. He said, "Today Apple is going to reinvent the phone." Then, he introduced the iPhone to the world. In that single moment, the history of the mobile phone industry changed forever. Even today, nearly every smartphone carries ideas that can be traced back to that day. Yet even at the height of his success, life continued to test him. In 2003, Steve was diagnosed with a rare form of pancreatic cancer. He underwent treatment, he kept working, and he continued pursuing his dreams until the very end. In 2011, Steve Jobs passed away. But before he left the world, he shared words that continue to inspire millions. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Those words remind us that our lives are finite, so we should have the courage to live them on our own terms. Steve Jobs didn't just leave us with groundbreaking technology. He left us with an even greater lesson. Failure is never the end. Sometimes failure takes you to places that success alone never could. If Steve had never been forced out of Apple, there might never have been Next. There might never have been Pixar, and Apple might never have written its greatest chapter. Always remember, sometimes life's biggest setback turns out to be its greatest gift. So if you're facing challenges today, if people don't believe in you, if the world is underestimating you, don't give up, because the greatest chapter of your story may still be waiting to be written. If this story inspired you, be sure to give this video a like. And if you want more inspiring stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel.